An attack on a young black man in Scranton 4 months ago has raised some serious questions about discrimination in our area.
And the possibility that white supremacist groups want to become more active here. News 22 and the Northeast Pennsylvania News Alliance, our partners at the Times and Tribune, have been looking into the issue of hate crimes in our area. In part one of our special series of reports called The State of Hate, News 22's David DeCosmo tells us why some people believe our area is a prime target for hate crimes.
The arrest of these three men after an attack on a young black man in Scranton in March has raised some serious questions about racial problems in our area. District Attorney Andy Jarbola said the men arrested for that attack have been linked with a white supremacist group known as Skinheads. The state calls it a hate group, and there may be more than you might imagine.
In Pennsylvania, we're in the top 5 in the nation, states with active hate groups.
Dr. Jean Harris is an assistant professor of political science at the University of Scranton. She says the population of Scranton is changing, and that can lead to hate crimes.
When you have a homogeneous population, there's not the same competition, fear, misunderstandings. But once you begin to integrate other groups, as is happening in this area, that's when you're going to see an increase of crimes motivated by prejudice, stereotypes, a sense that someone else, another group of people, are taking what's rightfully yours.
Some of those feelings were expressed by members of the Klux Klan when they rallied in Pottsville back in 1998. But sometimes hate is a lot more subtle.
Graffiti is something that certainly is illegal, and when it's used in an intimidating manner, it can be considered part of a hate crime.
Allison Herlands remembers a swastika painted on the sidewalk in front of Temple Israel in Scranton.
I mean, I think it does obviously hit home a little bit harder because I am Jewish and I do belong to this temple. And I did have some fear walking the doors, going for the high holidays. I think that anyone, you know, should be offended by a symbol of hatred like that.
We're told that crimes are more likely to be committed by individuals than by groups. But are hate groups making their way into this area? More on that in part 2 of our series, The State of Hate. In Scranton, David DeCosmo, News 22.
Tomorrow on News 22 at 6, The State of Hate, how skinheads are using the internet to reach their targets.
President Bush is standing
part-time in 2 departments.
The guy. Experts say Pennsylvania is one of the top 5 states in the nation with active hate groups. Many say our area is a prime target for hate group recruiting. In this special report called The State of Hate, News 22's David DeCosmo talks to someone who used to belong to one of those groups.
You'd be hard-pressed to find signs of hate group activity in the city of Scranton, but that doesn't mean they, or the attitudes that feed them, aren't here. Norman Jackson is a black man who works at a Jewish synagogue.
Is there discrimination here in Scranton?
Well, some. I haven't experienced a whole lot, but I experienced some, yes.
How about hate crimes? Hate crimes here?
Oh, I wouldn't say crimes, but you say like calling out names while riding by in the cars and stuff like that.
Floyd Cochran will tell you that racial taunts can easily escalate to violence. He's a former Aryan Nation member who now lectures against white supremacist groups. He says those groups are recruiting in Pennsylvania, and they're usually looking for young people.
They are targeting people between the ages of 11 and 25, so we need to be concerned. If these were drug dealers showing up out on the steps here to recruit kids, parents would be very concerned.
Pennsylvania lists the Keystone State Skinheads as a hate organization. That group runs an internet website that lists chapters throughout the state. Since the Skinheads boast of a chapter in the Wilkes-Barre-Scranton area, we contacted them by email to see if they'd like to participate in this series. This was their reply. The writer only uses the initials BW and writes, Mr. DeCosmo, it perplexes me as to why you would think the Keystone State Skinheads either advocate, condone, or commit so-called hate crimes. I assure you, we do neither. Tomorrow, some thoughts about recognizing hate groups and dealing with trouble before it happens. In Scranton, David DeCosmo, News 22.
Well, we move now from hate to caring.
Every day, newborn babies, people that have to come down. For the past few days, News 22 and our News Alliance partners at the Scranton Times have been looking into the state of hate in our area. As News 22's David DeCosmo tells us in the final part of this series, there is a way to identify hate groups before they get out of hand.
Meet Darrell Lamont Jenkins, a man who spends much of his time tracking the activities of hate groups. Jenkins says the original skinheads were immigrants who came to London from Jamaica to find work. Whites began to adopt their styles, but a few spin-off groups became white supremacists. The Keystone State Skinheads has a website which features a photo of 21 men, mostly masked and some armed. Jenkins says supremacist groups often display symbols like the Nazi swastika, the Knight Rider of the Ku Klux Klan, the Celtic Cross, or the crossed hammers.
Not all of them. Not all of them are bad people. I would say that. But by the same token, we can't allow them to we have to be firm. We can't allow them to function as they are.
So how do we deal with hate groups and the potential of hate crimes? University of Scranton professor Dr. Gene Harris says our best bet is education.
A lot of schools and educational institutions are creating programs to try to teach people to recognize there's value in difference, and difference doesn't mean one is better than the other.
But the bottom line is we all need to get back on the same page. We all need to start talking more about our concerns and about our so-called differences, and just hammer a lot of this out, and then we'll be fine.
In Scranton, David D. Cosbo, News 22.